Carla, please tell us about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Carla Qualtrough, and as you know, I'm the Liberal Party of Canada candidate for the 2019 federal election. I'm running for re-election. I've been Member of Parliament for the past 4 years, and it has been such an honor to serve Delta in this role. By way of background, I'm a human rights lawyer. I'm a mother of 4, Paralympic swimmer. I'm a person with a disability. I'm legally blind. And I'm a strong advocate for inclusion and equity and just making sure that everybody has a fair chance to succeed. I'm running again because I've really seen progress over the past 4 years through our government, and I think Canada has advanced in some really important ways. But I recognize that there's a lot more work to be done, and I'm hoping to be a part of the team that does it.
Thank you. First question we'd like to ask you on behalf of the businesses in Delta. There's been a lot of conversation about the Massey tunnel replacement and transportation infrastructure in our community. Could you please tell us, if elected, how your government will support these transportation infrastructure projects, and particularly the Massey tunnel replacement and improving transit south of the Fraser?
So our government over the past 4 years has made significant investments in infrastructure across the country. So we committed $180 billion to a national infrastructure program to invest in projects just like the George Massey tunnel replacement. We know the importance of this crossing to our community, to the region, and quite frankly to the nation. It is a major trade corridor. It moves goods from the biggest port in the country through the biggest international airport on the West Coast to the border and back. Never mind the hundreds of thousands of commuters that use that crossing every day. Never mind the impact it has on our first responders. So I've heard time and time again the importance of this. I also can tell you that as a component of our $180 billion infrastructure program, public transit is a major priority. We've already given British Columbia $4.1 billion for infrastructure. $2.2 billion of that is for public transit. We've invested south of the Fraser a ton, whether it's buses, accessible buses. I'll put a plug in for our accessibility initiatives, but also SkyTrain in Surrey, and we are not done there. What I will say for my own part on the Massey tunnel replacement is I've been engaged in this file from the beginning. I've made sure the National Infrastructure Minister came here, toured the site with our mayor to make sure it was on Ottawa's radar. But the way this money is dispersed is through the provinces, and the province has to make this a priority. So I've written a letter to the Premier and said, let's get on with it. There's federal money here for this type of project. Identify what you want to do, make it a priority, make the request, and the money will come. And I can tell you, when the Prime Minister was here in Delta a couple of days ago, he made that same commitment.
Thank you. Next question. Our Delta businesses rely a lot on foreign trade. Given the recent complications with China, what would your government strategy be to improve relations with Asia Pacific, and would your government look to normalize relations with China or seek other trading opportunities?
Well, I would say a bit of all of the above, quite frankly. So Canada's a trading nation. We always have been, we always will be. We don't have enough people to make all the goods we need, and we don't have enough businesses to buy all the things we need here in Canada. So for me and for our government, international trade and trade diversification has been a massive priority over the past 4 years. In the past 4 years, we've signed trade agreements with Europe, so the CETA, with South Asia, which is the CPTPP, and of course we're working on our relationship with the US, our biggest trading partner. $2 billion of goods and services flow across our borders every day. On China specifically, of course, we have to make our relationship better with China. It's a global player now in a way that historically it hasn't been. And we rely on China our farmers rely on China, our businesses rely on China, and quite frankly, as consumers, we rely on China. So I think as we diversify, so as we go out and seek new markets with these 3 agreements I've just mentioned, we have Canadian businesses have access to 1.5 billion consumers that we didn't have 4 years ago. That's a big deal for our companies. Now we have to get through a global export strategy, get our goods out there, get our businesses doing businesses in countries that maybe historically we haven't focused on. So absolutely normalize, ameliorate the relationship with China, while at the same time not compromising our commitment to human rights, our commitment to rules-based trade, our commitment to improve and modernize the WTO. All that's got to be at play. But we can do better, and we need to diversify.
Thank you. The next question concerning our businesses is the lack of housing in Delta, affordable housing in Delta. And our businesses are having troubles attracting people to Delta because of the expensive housing market we're in. What would your government do to help subsidize housing in Delta?
It's such a big issue. Affordability by far is the thing I hear the most right now as I'm door knocking and talking to people in Delta. It's not new. We've been hearing this for years. It's very difficult to get into the housing market in our community. And I've heard from a number of business leaders that they can't attract the talent they need because of this significant barrier. So whether it's a lack of affordable housing, so we don't have the breadth of housing options that we need in our community to serve our people, housing affordability. Housing costs so much money here. We don't have housing near transit. There's so many different types of barriers to housing in our community. We put in place a $40 billion national housing strategy, the first federal national housing strategy ever. We have basically stuck our stake in the ground and said the federal government is back in the housing game, if you will. And we are investing in things like a national housing benefit. So this will be a benefit that people of a certain income can get in order to make housing more affordable. That's going to start in 2020. And we're doing the first-time home buyers incentive, which basically helps reduce the cost of your mortgage, of the amount you have to qualify for a mortgage, and it gives the federal government what effectively is an equity share in your property to bring down the overall cost of your house. I've worked a lot with housing advocates in Delta, particularly those who advocate for housing of people with disabilities, because that's a personal passion of mine. But we haven't cracked the nut yet here in Delta, and we need to do better. The way we do that is by staying in the housing game as a federal government, working with provinces, figuring out what communities need in terms of housing, and that's our commitment moving forward, that we are now in the game. We're back in the game of housing. We know it's a significant barrier to people moving to communities like Delta where there are good jobs, but even our good jobs aren't enough to incentivize people to come and buy here because they just can't. It's not fair, and we need to fix it.
Thank you. Our businesses in Delta are under the stresses of many layers of taxes in conducting their business. Would your government implement a nonpartisan Royal Commission on tax reform to examine all aspects of Canadian tax policy in order to give businesses the opportunity for a fairer and more sustainable level of competitiveness?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I'd say that all businesses in Canada deserve a tax system that is nimble, that is responsive, that encourages growth, and that supports your goals of the business community. I'm not sure, quite frankly, that a Royal Commission will get you there. I think Royal Commissions tend to be quite clunky. They're quite resource intensive. They take a long time. And they often yield recommendations that by the time they're implemented, they're not what the community needs anymore. So I think there may be a more nimble way to get the kind of tax reform and modernizations that businesses in Canada need. We are constantly reviewing the Income Tax Act as a matter of course as the federal government, but that doesn't necessarily yield the kind of sweeping changes that I think businesses in Canada are calling for. I think we're on the way. I think there was a reform package in 2016, but I think what that highlighted was we can't do this piecemeal anymore. We can't just keep identifying tiny little gaps and filling them only to create other problems elsewhere in the system. So I don't think, my gut on this isn't that a Royal Commission is the way to go. I looked it up in preparing for this, and I can tell you the last time we had one on tax reform was in 1966. So I think there's a reason we haven't had one since, because they're not the most effective tool for the kind of nimble tax reform and modernization of how we do business. We need to make it simpler for businesses, right? We need to find ways that acknowledge the risk that is taken on every day by our business community. It's very different to run your own business and create jobs and be responsible for other people's livelihoods than to go into an office every day for a guaranteed paycheck. And somehow our tax system has to reflect that.
Thank you. The final question. Our businesses are looking for skilled labor and are having difficulties finding skilled labor to do the jobs required to grow their businesses. If elected, will your government look at changing our immigration policies to provide our businesses access to more skilled labor in order to meet the labor shortages that we're finding in our industrial and farming sectors here in Delta?
Yeah, the short answer, Garry, is yes. Yes, we will, absolutely. But the bigger picture here is our economy and how it's firing on all cylinders. We have the lowest unemployment rates we've ever had since we've been recording unemployment rates here in this country. And we have the highest growth in the G7. We're the only G7 country to have trade agreements with all the other G7 countries. We are doing quite well at the macroeconomic level. Now, we used to have a problem in Canada where we had too many people and not enough jobs. We now have too many jobs and not enough people. So how do we fix that? Well, for people in Delta, for businesses in Delta, I mean, we have to look at our temporary foreign workers programs, which quite frankly, I don't often get political, but the Conservatives really messed that one up. And we've spent 4 years trying to fix it. We need to make sure that people can get the workers they need when they need them. We need to make sure that the workers are protected, that they are paid fairly, and that their safety is taken into consideration. And we need to make the application process nimble and responsive so that you get the people you need when you need them. If you make an application in August because you need people to pick peppers in January, it's no help if it takes you till March to get your application processed. So we need to fix that for sure. The other thing we need to do is attract skilled labor from abroad permanently, not just temporarily. So we have a global skills strategy in place that we're going to beef up in the next 4 years. It's attracted a lot of people. It's created a path to citizenship for skilled labor to come to Canada. But it's not quite there yet, and I recognize that, and I hear from farmers in particular all the time here in Delta how frustrating it is to have these massive crops that go unyielded because they don't have enough people, and I get that that's incredibly frustrated. I hear from restaurant owners who want to expand their hours, they can't find people to work. So we got to fix that for sure, and that's definitely something that's been on my radar, remains on my radar because it's very important to people here in Delta. But the exciting thing for me is that immigration is only one tool to get us there. And we are investing quite significantly as a government in skills training generally. So to train Canadians to do these jobs and to try and create a culture where these jobs are attractive to our citizens as well, not just foreign workers. So I think there's a couple of solutions here, and I think we need to move forward. I mean, we are never in Canada, if things keep going this way, going to be able to fill the demand for jobs that we have. And it's a nice problem to have, but it's a real problem, and we got to fix it.
Carla, thank you very much for coming to speak to the Chamber today.
Well, it's my pleasure. I love you guys.
And answering our questions concerning our businesses. I know you're very busy with the campaign. We really appreciate it, and thank you so much.
And thank you for giving me the time to share my views with your audience.
Excellent. Thanks.